Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Erica Piola. I'm an ESA board member, as well as the curator of graphic arts and the director of the visual culture program at the Library Company of Philadelphia. And it's my great pleasure this morning to introduce Ellen GK Rubin. Ellen, also known as the pop-up lady to many of you, has collected pop-up and movable books and ephemera for about 40 years, since seeing Yale University's exhibition, Eccentric Books. And this is while she was studying to become a physician associate. Her curated exhibitions have included Brooklyn pop-ups and paper engineering, fold, pull, pop, and turn in 2010 at the Smithsonian Library. Ellen also curated pop-ups from Prague, a centennial celebration of the graphic artistry of Wojciech Kubaszta at the Groyer Club in 2014, for which her catalog won the 2015 Lieb Award. She's a founding and board member of the Movable Book Society and writes for its newsletter, Movable Stationery. She's also a member of the Ephemera Society of America, Groyer Club, and the Miniature Book Society. She's a busy lady. She has also demonstrated pop-ups from her collection. I believe it's at about 11,000 items, 12,000 items at this point, on the Martha Stewart Show, CBS Sunday Morning, Japanese TV, and Atlas Obscura. Today, Ellen will be presenting to us about interactive political ephemera, making a statement with mechanical paper. Please help me welcome Ellen to the podium to learn more about the literal and rhetorical push and pull of political mechanical paper ephemera. Sorry, I had to get that little thing in there. Welcome, Ellen.
I'm waiting for my... Can you put my... Hello? Am I supposed to? No? I don't know. There I am. There we go.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let's get you to slideshow. There we go.
Okay. Thank you, Erica. Well, good morning. Thank you all for coming out, and I especially want to thank the Ephemera Society for inviting me to speak and giving me this topic, which means I can focus on a subset of my collection, and that helps me learn so much more about what I have. So all of my ephemera are paper, and they are all movable. All of my books are movable. And I am not a historian, so I'm not going to be teaching you a lot of history of what I'm about to show you. What I will focus on are the mechanicals. You mostly are familiar with them, but you may not know how they came to be and what they are called, etc. I'm doing this almost chronologically, and this is the Napoleonic War, and you see a 6-slat transformation. Some people call it a Venetian blind. And when you pull the tab on the bottom, you get a totally different image. So here is Napoleon in his classic stance with his tricorn hat, and since he was exiled, we now have King Louis XVIII taking his place. I cheated a little bit here because this is not from literally the Belgian Revolution, but it does relate to it. This was a large paper folder that was made for the Venice Biennale in 1980. It's the entry for Belgium, done by Hugo de Kempeneer. And when you open it up and you pull down 2 sides along the gutter, you get what becomes, he calls, a shooting gallery. And you can see these heads of state. There's Gaddafi and Arafat and Castro and so many others. And on the back of the folder, he has an image of a rifle shooting at them as if this is a carnival shooting gallery. And the reason is, during the Belgian Revolution, the empire of, or the Kingdom of Belgium was created from England and from the Netherlands. But they went on to be become one of the biggest arms dealers in the world. And so he is commenting that Belgium became this war lord, so to speak, by circulating arms. This mechanism is so magical. It's called the roller mechanism. And again, one figure turns into another. You pull the tab, and we have from the Boer War, which I know very little about, and you have King Edward VII becoming the new president of South Africa, Paul Kruger. This is part of a series. I have many cards called Un Mystery of different images not relating to this time frame. It could be other time frames. And this is a postcard with an undivided back. Most of you know if it has an undivided back, it was produced before 1907, 1908, depending upon where it was produced. I slipped in a book, this one, The Tools of War and Theory of Musketry, and when you rotate the rifle, it shows you the trajectory of your bullet. And there are several other images. This is the only movable in this book. We come to the Civil War, and this is about Jefferson Davis, and you see on the left the figure of Jefferson Davis with a slit, and that's because you can turn up this top flap, or you can turn down the bottom one, and you see they are numbered. When you turn number 1 up, you still see Jefferson Davis, but now he will have a noose around his neck. And when you turn down flap 2, you will see the complete Jefferson Davis. Because you can turn it up and turn it down, it is called a turn-up book. We had a question the other day about what is a book. Well, a book does not have to be a codex. It should impart information. And in the mid-1700s, Robert Sayre created this book. It was a folded piece in 4 parts, cut through the middle, and as you turn the flaps up and turn the flaps down, the story will progress. Robert Sayre also used many harlequinade figures, so the alternative term is harlequinade, turn-up book or harlequinade. And you see the final image is of Jefferson Davis hanging. Well, he was never executed, so I think this was wishful thinking on the part of this artist. One of my favorite mechanicals called a myriopticon. And you can see that it's like a television set, and through the window is a scroll with varied number of images. There are winders on the top, and if you acquire one of these and have the original winders, you're doing very, very well, because they are often the thing that is lost. This one, obviously, the historical panorama of the rebellion. I have many other topics. This one was made by Milton Bradley. There were many that were made by McLaughlin Brothers in the United States, but they were also made overseas. It's a wonderful way to tell a story. I think most of you are familiar with the silhouettes of Kara Walker. And this book, Freedom, a Fable, a Curious Interpretation of the Wit of a Negress in Troubled Times, is about slavery and the Civil War. Now, the edition was 4,000, and that's because Peter Norton's Christmas list had 4,000 names on it, and all of those people got a book. Fortunately, I have a friend on the list, and she gave me this book. Moving to World War I, and what I saw looking at my collection of World War I was the level of hate, certainly the French for the Germans. This would be a rondel. All these circles you see on the right would fold into, and you would have a single circle. The top one shows the sinking of the Lusitania. Then there is the bombing of Reims Cathedral, and on the left I've blown up a German soldier killing a nurse. Well, this was not just any nurse. This was Edith Cavell. And she was extraordinary because it didn't matter who came into her tent or clinic or hospital. She didn't care which side of the conflict you were on. She took care of you. Well, the Germans didn't care. They tried her, found her guilty, and killed her by a firing squad. I don't know why this is portrayed this way. But she's also unique in that she's only one of 3 women who lied in state in Britain. The other 2 was Princess Diana and Margaret Thatcher. Well, the French had a lot of fun with their propaganda. This is a Vauvel. There's a wheel behind the card and a die-cut hole in the front. When you turn the wheel, action happens. Obviously, what the action is here, the French believed that the Germans were uncivil, and so their bread they called poop bread or KK bread, and here is the German soldier collecting the material to make the poop bread. This is a questionnaire, also done with a Vauvel. There are 3 die-cut holes on the bottom and 1 larger one on the top. When you turn the wheel, a number appears, and the answer to the question appears at the top. And so, why is Germany banned from humanity? Because they bomb churches, destroy villages and ambulances, and the Lusitania. And on the back of this is printed from our President Wilson, basically saying, don't trust the Germans. This is also part of a series, and most of you know, if there's no bibliography, I have no way of knowing how many there are in the series. But when I found this card, and it was one of the first from World War I that I have, I actually gasped. So you see on the right 2 little boys playing in the plaza in a French village, one holding a toy gun. And when you pull the tab, and this is a 4-slat transformation, the Germans kill the child. This is a fun mechanism. I remember seeing it as a child. It's called a wallet because the viewer doesn't realize that the card can open from either side. And so we have a quiet village at the beginning of World War I. Beautiful, serene, children are playing, the women are going about their duties. And then 1 month later, when you open it from the other side, Ellen, open it up, please. Total devastation. The village is destroyed. And I call your attention to the several incidences of German soldiers putting upon women. That is clear in this image. Well, the Germans had their propaganda, and here is a postcard with another Vauvel, and when you turn the wheel, the term German greetings from Fat Bertha, which is what they called their cannon. And so we see the cannon in the foreground, and in the background, the Zeppelin. Very interesting to know that that was part of World War I. Many of you will recognize this postcard. Several of you have offered it to me. It's clearly already in my collection. But it gives me the opportunity to say that if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a pop-up is worth 1,000,000. You do not have to speak the several languages that are on this card. Just turn the wheel, and it's another form of a Vauvel, and you see how after the Treaty of Trianon in 1920, the Hungarian Empire was broken up. Totally graphic, just a beautiful example of pop-ups as a teaching tool. Well, the original piece of art on the left, I did not put a video for you because I thought your imagination could understand the thrusting that's going on. But I could not figure out, was this World War I or World War II? There's no markings on this of any kind. I researched gas masks and I still couldn't figure it out. He has a D period, O period on his armband, and I still couldn't figure it out. So what does a researcher do? You go to an expert. And I contacted fellow Groliorite Ken Rendell, who probably has the most magnificent collection of World War II artifacts. He has a complete museum in New England. I did not send him the image immediately. I thought that would be very crass. I asked him, may I send you one that's a bit risque? And so he said yes. And he looked at it and he said, these are World War II masks. So now I have it identified. He thought the DO pertained to civil wardens that walked around with their gas masks, which my father was in World War II. I only recently found this photograph by Edward Weston. It is of his wife, and she was a volunteer in the Aircraft Warning Service in World War II, and I wonder if the artist had seen this image and created this piece of art. Questions that ephemera do raise. On the left is another Volvel, and it's called, printed on it, a hysteroscope. And as you turn the wheel, Hitler's head changes, and it becomes a pig, it becomes a bull, and it becomes Ribbentrop. And on the right, a postcard, certainly propaganda, that see what happens to Adolf, and when you lift the flap that looks like the heel of a boot, and we do associate boots with the Nazis, he goes down the toilet where he belongs. I don't know what you're going to think of me, but Pop-Up Lady has a lot of pop-ups, and I didn't animate this for you either, for the obvious reason. When I looked carefully at this and saw that the figure on the left has a swastika, because I was told this is Mussolini, but having seen the Ribbentrop, it raised a question. Is this Ribbentrop? Is this Mussolini? I wanted to give you true information. So I went back to Ken Rendell, who at this point thinks I'm quite a risque person. And he said, no, 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 that is definitely Mussolini. And the original stab in the back came out of the World War I and the Italians turning against the Germans. And even during World War II, though Mussolini and Hitler pretended to be good friends, in fact, Mussolini was against Hitler invading Poland. This card, you know, I always wonder, who are they made for? It's not a postcard. It doesn't have any information on it. But Churchill standing in front of world leaders, you open it up to a Soviet thug, full of blood, hammer and sickle, and the gallows in the back. And you can see the response is the world leaders feeling very faint. And what it says is, freedom for all is guaranteed by us, and I think they're talking about the Soviets, to all European heads of state and politicians, based on the model proven and employed for dozens of years in the Soviet Union. So, wink, wink, we know what that was about. Well, in 2014, I did an exhibition at the Grolier Club devoted to Wojciech Kubaszta, who is an artist who I specialize in. And because Kubaszta graduated from art school in 1938, and then the Nazis marched into Czechoslovakia, there were many visitors who asked me what was Kubaszta's opinion of the Nazis, because he lived there while it was under siege. And on the right is a mock-up. I don't think it was ever made. I know it was never finished because it is a Volvel, a rare thing for Kubaszta to make. There are some empty slots. And this is an image of a 17th century queen who said Czechoslovakia would go on to be a great country, very civil and cultured. And when you turn the wheel, inside are German characters from literature who railed against Germany, who spoke against Germany. So I think this was Kubashta giving his opinion in a very artistic and subtle way. And on the left is a ex libris that he designed. But when I looked at it and I saw these four images of Prague and London and Egypt and New York, it raised the question, who was this man who commissioned this ex libris? And the plane was a tip-off. But I found on Facebook a Facebook page devoted to Czech pilots who fought for the RAF. And that was really interesting to me, and that pilots from other countries were fighting for the Allies even though they were occupied. Another exhibition that I just completed at the Greuter Club is totally of advertising ephemera, premiums, promos, and pop-ups. And in it, I have a Wonder Bread ad. And Wonder Bread did several ads like this to identify things related to World War II. So on the beginning side, you can identify planes for the Allies. And on this side, you can identify the planes for the enemy, the Axis. On the right was a series of Christmas cards, and I thought it was so interesting that this Christmas card is devoted to mutts with a mission, those war dogs that were used during World War II and other wars as well. So the Japanese had propaganda, and this was a leaflet. They dropped thousands of these over Australia, New Guinea, Papua, etc. And basically what it's saying, if you Australian men go to fight for the Allies, if you go to fight for the Allies, the Yanks will come and put upon your women. And I hadn't thought to say this, but yesterday, driving here, listening to Terry Gross interview a specialist on propaganda who has just written a book on it, talked about the English during World War II had a separate propaganda committee, and they produced pornographic propaganda against the Germans. So pornographic that Terry Gross could not read the text on radio. That's the only example I have. I'm sure there are many. We were just referring to Richard's poignant slides. This is the most poignant, I think, in this presentation. We know that Israel was created in 1948. And what we have on the left is a card that pertains to those displaced Jews. Where would they go? So in this Vovel, you have a group of people leaving the fist iron of totalitarianism and the Nazis, and a question mark, where can they go? Well, now they had a homeland. And what this card is devoted to is raising money to give plots of land in Galilee so the displaced people could have a place to go. The one on the right, I don't have the date, I dated it about 1939, was made by a Polish union. On the verso, it gives the population of Poland at that time, which was 3 million Jews and 30 million Poles. And on this side, on the Vovel, it says, Jews make the postcards, even Christian ones, don't buy the Jewish ones. And as you turn the wheel, it makes a comparison between the Jews and the Poles. So for example, 98% of Jews are communists and only 2% of Poles. 100% of Jews are unemployed. And it goes on and on. And so we are not surprised by the anti-Semitism in Poland, but this was quite a graphic example in the fact that you would put it in a postcard and send it to people. Well, yes, Israel was created in 1948, and in the 1950s, they did a whole series of greeting cards, very glitzy, especially for Jewish material. It's all covered with glitter, and this particular one has the military might. I feel it's saying never again. There are many other subjects. They were done for New Year's cards and Passover. The one on by the way, this is a fan-folded pop-up that there's a little stem that's holding it up. When you open it up, it comes 3D. On the right, you have a Israeli soldier, and he's standing in front of the Wailing Wall. So this is a New Year's card done after the Six-Day War. Before the Six-Day War, Jews could not pray at their most holy site. The Arabs didn't allow them to do it. After the Six-Day War, anyone could approach the Wailing Wall. And when you lift the flap, this whole panorama unfolds of all of these military machinery and the like. And it says in Hebrew, join a military academy and fight for the IDF. Interestingly enough, I have a friend who's a Sabra who interprets all this for me because the backside is handwritten, and it's a letter to his grandmother. Okay, not war, but politics. And people running for office use movables all the time. Obviously, this is a matchbook, and if it's in my collection, it has a pop-up. And this is Wright Patman running for U.S. Representative from Texas. The map pops up, and every match has something related to Texas, their icon, their motto, and things like that. This is really funny, I think. William Jennings Bryan running for president, and he wants you to associate him with the glorified and revered George Washington. So here is his face inside George Washington's image, and then you see them both together so you can keep that relationship that think of me, think of George Washington. And finally, we have Clinton and Gore, and for their 1992 inauguration, they created this hat. And surprisingly, when you open the brim, what pops up is Clinton, Gore, and the White House, and this is hidden in the brim. I have two others that are Disney books. I've never seen them come to the market. I'm sure they're out there. People are saving them, but I've never seen them again. And on occasion, I do workshops for very young children, and that is because I'm not a paper engineer. And once I get beyond the two basic things, older children just take off, and they do all kinds of things. So I do for young children, and I wear one of the Disney hats, and I said, do you think this grandma wears a baseball hat? And then I open the brim, and they all gasp, and they find it really clever. This artist book is just beautifully, beautifully printed by Elsie Ellis, Quest for the Ethical Compass. And on the cover is an actual compass. And there are several examples of politicians losing that ethical compass. And here, of course, is Tricky Dick, or Richard Nixon. And it says, did Richard Nixon accidentally erase the ethical compass? Somewhere between filing his income taxes, Vietnam, South America, and Watergate. Well, this is an artist book by the Irma Bombeck of paper engineering. I don't know if Emily is here, if she made it. She was trying, I know. It's done by Emily Martin, and she always has a great deal of wit, even in a serious idea. This is one of 5 puppets. There's also a sock puppet. You can tell who she's aiming at, and it's called King Lear. Look at the spelling. A Tragedy in 5 Puppets. So when you hold the stick and tuck the red tie, I love that you don't pull it down to open his mouth. You shove it up. Sorry to get political. And it says, I think apologizing is a great thing, but you have to be wrong. I will absolutely apologize sometime in the hopefully distant future if I am ever wrong. The Irma Bombeck of paper engineering. And finally, those of you who know Ed Hutchins, you love him. He's just a wonderful man. All of his paper, or just about all of his book arts, are devoted to diversity and intolerance. And this one, called World Peace, breaks apart into 4 parts. You open it up, it's a panorama, and it talks about just avoiding intolerance, ignorance, poverty, and hunger. And I couldn't resist putting in John Lennon's quote, "Give peace a chance." That's what this is about. So I did this exhibition at the Grolier Club that closed just this past year, and animated advertising. The catalog is movable. Oh, I don't have it there. The catalog is movable in the Volvel. It has flaps covering the colophon in the back, and with the Ephemera Society permission, I brought several copies. If you want one and you don't have one, you can just tap me and I'll get one for you. And I will leave you with this Chinese saying, "I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand." And that's what movable paper is about. You interact with the object, and by being the energy of that object, you understand it better, you appreciate it more, and you even remember it more. So thank you, Ephemera Society, and thank you for your patience. Thank you. I hope to answer any questions if there are any. One in the back on the right. Beth is getting her exercise today. I think she's looking forward to the break.
Hi,
Hi.
Fabulous, fabulous talk.
Thank you.
My question is, in terms of your wartime ephemera, you know, where one side is trying to politicize or influence your attitude toward the other side, what's your sense as to which countries did it the most and which might have done it the least?
Since I only collect the movable, I can't really categorically answer that. I have to say, based on animated advertising and looking at my collection as a whole, the French turned out movable color material like crazy. So most of animated advertising is French, and so even for this, there's a great deal of French. Does that mean the French, you know, made more propaganda? Maybe I don't have access to the German, or maybe the German material wasn't movable and I didn't see it. So it's not a sufficient answer, but it's the only one I could give you.
This is a rather mundane question, but I'm curious if you ever had a moment in manipulating and working with your movables where you had like something tore or like you know something went awry. Because I know in the library company's collection we have, thanks to Barbara Foss Charles and Robert Staples, and sometimes I get a little paranoid. I'm trying to figure out how to manipulate or to use the movable and you know. Has that ever happened to you or something tore?
Yes.
And, okay. and what did you do?
Yes, and it probably depends on the quality of the paper, and also how many times it's been manipulated, and so there are. I try to repair with archival tape some things. I am not a conservator. I wish I had one in my pocket because they do get ruined. And certainly with the movable books, the children's books, many of them have damages in them, though I always try to get the best copy I can. I also say about my movable books, they're all first editions. And that's because most pop-up books never make it into a second edition. And so, but yeah, damages are always there. If I recognize it as something very rare, even if it's damaged, I'm going to want to acquire it and then hopefully find a better copy. I know that all of you collectors do the same. Beth?
Yeah, what a wonderful presentation, really.
Thank you.
I'm interested in the Chinese saying. I think that's just a fabulous.
I have heard that it's a Native American saying.
Oh, let's do that.
I've seen both, and again, maybe I need another scholar to tell me which one it is. But I've seen both categorically.
You could say pre-communist or something under this.
I don't want to go there. Yeah,
but
I think it's very
I think
poignant.
the seeing and doing part is very interesting. The doing, I get, and I've thought of it, and I wonder if you've thought about the connection between this and cinema, which is these are in a certain sense cinematic, but they do involve a doing, which cinema does not do. But I was thinking about these seeing sequential imagery and wondering if you have thought or anybody's thought about a connection between cinema.
Well, you raise a really important question, because most of the movables is the prelim to cinema, and I actually make sure that's part of my collection. So I have zoetropes, the Myriopticon, all of that to movement flip books, which can be very early. They're all pre-cinema. And in terms of, movies today, well, you click it in your Netflix or something. But yeah, these definitely are pre-cinema.
I'm struck by the theme, the background music, the gestalt of yesterday's presentation of the emerging scholar and today's two talks, that there is in all three a quest for a moral compass. And I would like you to comment on that phrase, but what is occurring to me sitting here is that in the ephemerist's search for truth, what's the real story? What are the facts? There is an urging in the world of ephemera and ephemeris, an urging to pursue and be aware of what is going on in the society, and an urging to seek improved awareness of truth. And it's permeated all three talks on entirely different subjects. Poignancy has been used, but desperation, and to contrast the concern of the Civil War jailer to do the right thing and compensate the prisoner for what they have. I mean, this theme has just been part of all three, and I think it's just worth commenting on, and I'd like to hear from you the origin of the phrase quest for a moral compass.
It's a very big question. But my first reaction would be, as humans, we have a quest for truth. I think that follows almost in everything that we're doing, and today we are fighting against untruths, and we see in some of this material truth as seen from one side. Now, some of them have actual facts the Lusitania was sunk by the Germans. Nothing to talk about that in terms of, is this a truth? But many things are one-sided, and what's true to one person may not be true to the other. I mean, we're witnessing all of this now, and how people are reacting to October 7th and how there's things in the world. But I think as humans, we seek truth. We're comfortable with what we believe is true. And therefore, you want to follow a moral compass, so you will be projecting truth. I can't be more philosophical than that. Thank you.
Ellen, thank you. It's always fun talking with you about mechanicals and movables because of the second language that you use. Turnips, harlequins, rondelles, vovels, wallet, fan-folded, it goes on and on. I'm curious, with your research, do you find that there's a consistency in the use of these terms among collectors and maybe even among catalogers at research institutions?
From your mouth to God's ears. No. And I've been urging the Movable Book Society to meet and decide what we believe would be a definitive title for each one of these things, and then hopefully it will be taken up. No, catalogers do not use these terms. When I look for Vovel, for some that's a bit sophisticated. I mean, I'm talking about, I search everything from eBay to Heritage to Swan. I mean, I go to the Gap, and not everybody uses the same term. So recently I started using rotate because I started noticing that people were using rotate. They don't know to call it a Vovel. And the answer is sadly no. There isn't really a consistent way. I try to be consistent. I do write about these things, and maybe that word will get out, but it's something that I believe the Movable Book Society should be working on to make these terms hard and fast. But it's language, and you know, you said like the slat formation, people call it Venetian blind. I heard it called something else the other day. I understand what they're talking about, but I can only rely on search terms, okay? When you have a virtual auction, yeah, there are some exhibitors that I'll go for because I know they may have material for me, but I basically use keywords because there's almost no subject in my collection that doesn't exist anywhere. Just ask me about, well, I don't know about captured material, okay? And you didn't see any movables, but there was a movable in yesterday's. There was that doll with one leg. So, yeah, the terminology is not set, and catalogers, don't use the terms generally. The Library of Congress calls them toy books.
Hi, I'm just going to chime in as a librarian and a cataloger. The folks that I think you should work with are the rare books and manuscript section of the American Library Association, because they do have a controlled vocabulary for rare materials cataloging, and I think if there are terms that you want added to that, they would be very excited to hear from you. So this is not a question, this is just a plea to work with them.
Okay, I will talk to you and get that information down and definitely look at it. Thank you.
I just have a very basic question, which is your collection is so comprehensive, and I know collectors don't like to hear that because they're going to go out and buy something tomorrow, but how did you begin to focus on movables? And can you tell us a little bit about your trail in collecting and how you expanded from what you started with?
Certainly did. I didn't know pop-up and movables existed. I never had them as a child, though I was an avid reader. And then in the 1970s, I bought 2 Random House books for my sons. And I remember being more excited than they were. And the example I always give is the Random House book of trucks. This one son was interested in all kinds of vehicles. He's now a police lieutenant and drives one of those vehicles. And there was the car carrier, and you could just pull the cars off. It was so lifelike. And I like to say it's like the dollhouse I never had. And then in 1987, at an advanced age, I went back to school. I went to Yale Medical School, as was mentioned, and just coincidentally, the Sterling Library at Yale had an exhibition called Eccentric Books, 120 movable books going back to the 16th century. I had no idea. Most people think that, just like the Random House books, that pop-up books started in the 1970s, but here they were going back to the 17th or 16th century. I've since identified a book from the 12th century that has a movable, and I'm always excited to move the timeline back. But it was those 2 Random House books, Dinosaurs and Trucks, that I called my best friend, who also loved books, and I said, "These are the most amazing things." She said, "Why don't you collect them?" And the rest is history.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attention.